Welcome back. Chris Beaudry, a former assistant coach of the Humboldt Broncos hockey team, was among the first to witness the devastating bus accident that claimed 16 lives in 2018. Though he'd struggled with alcoholism and addiction for a significant portion of his life, Chris had been able to achieve sobriety prior to the tragic accident. However, everything changed for him after the Humboldt crash. In his own words, Chris will share his story and shed light on what unfolded next.
The assistant from the team we were playing from Nipawin had mentioned that he heard our bus was in an accident. And to me, I thought, oh, they hit a moose or flat tire, nothing big. We'll be late, but the game will be fine. And when I arrived on the scene, it was much worse. I don't know if it was a minute, 10 minutes, or 2 hours that I sat there, but then I was taken to the hospital because the hospital staff and the police needed me to help them recreate who would have been sitting where, and then to start identifying people as they came into the hospital, which led to the next day of me having to go to the morgue and identify all the bodies of everyone who passed. Now this was where some of the deepest trauma for me happened. Really, there was months of trying everything that was offered, trying to find triggers, and the doctors and therapists wanting me to reintroduce myself to these over and over. I couldn't be a father, I couldn't be a husband, I couldn't work. One small thing could take me down a deep, deep slope. And then every tool I thought I had before the Humboldt crash, when that happened, they were gone. They were lost. After that, I had a discussion with my sister about psilocybin for PTSD. When I quit drinking, I was clean and sober off of everything. I was terrified. Even the first idea of taking psilocybin again scared me, but the fight, flight, or freeze that I was living in was so terrifying, I was ready to try anything. And through all the studying I had done and the research, that I found that psilocybin wasn't addictive. It let me be with the emotions I was so terrified to be with. To be with that level of sadness, that level of rage, and the level of shame I had through Humboldt.
Chris Beaudry's story speaks to the therapeutic potential of using psilocybin, the psychoactive compound found in magic mushrooms, to treat addiction and mental health issues. Chris's story is also supported by recent studies that have shown promising results in using psilocybin to address addiction to alcohol and drugs. Earlier, I spoke with Olga Chernoloz about the latest research. She is a neuroscientist and clinical neuropharmacologist. Take a look. Dr. Chernoloz, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. I want to begin with your reaction to Chris Beaudry's story. He was 4 years sober when he witnessed the bus crash carrying the Humboldt Broncos hockey team. And to prevent a relapse from grief, he very reluctantly turned to psilocybin. Were you surprised by his positive experience?
Today, we have a fair amount of data around potential therapeutic uses of psilocybin and related substances for treating various mental health conditions. So I'm not surprised that he saw that psilocybin has been shown to help people with grief. And as a recovered addict, I can imagine how terrifying the prospect of relapsing could be when you already experiencing such a tremendous tragedy and loss.
Psilocybin is not legal in Canada, but in many cities, Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, a growing number of brick and mortar stores are beginning to sell it. And to the uninitiated, you might think that this is a drug that is purely recreational. Help me to understand some of the studies around its therapeutic benefits, specifically for people with addiction.
You know, the history of therapeutic psilocybin use is actually thousands of years long because it has been used in traditional cultures around the world, really, for thousands of years. And it was reintroduced, or you could say introduced to the West in 1950s and 60s when it even became a medication produced by the big pharma company. psilocybin was used for its therapeutic properties, helping clinicians to assist their patients in various clinical conditions, including addictions. And actually, here in Canada, we were pioneers in treating addiction with psychoactive substances. Today, when we are living through this revival of interest in therapeutic purposes of psychedelics, there is 138, I believe, clinical trials today going on with psilocybin around the world. There are studies in Denmark that are looking at alcohol addictions. There are studies in Johns Hopkins Institute in Baltimore looking in psilocybin helping people recover from being addicted to as well alcohol and cocaine. So it is very much of a hot topic. It is still being researched, but the preliminary data is very promising, and I'm hopeful that people suffering from various types of addictions will soon be able to turn to psilocybin as a treatment alternative for their illness.
Help me to understand how it works, specifically as it relates to addiction. You are a neuroscientist. What happens in the brain with psilocybin such that it can help treat addiction?
Addiction is a maladaptive adaptation. It's a bad habit, you can say. And how habits work is by stabilizing physical structures within our brains, where one part of the brain talks to another. So there are bridges established between one neuron and another, and when they are synchronized through certain behaviors, these bridges become stronger and stronger. And this can serve us well, for instance, when you learn to ride a bike, or when you learn a new language, or when you move to a new place and in a few months you're not stumbling around when you're walking around in the dark. That's because of neuroplasticity, this process of forming new bridges between the regions of the brain and separate neurons is happening. But the same thing is happening with bad habits. With addictions, we have these maladaptive habits, and psilocybin helps to rewire the brain, forming new connections and allowing for the old ones to, so to say, die off.
So then what would you say to skeptics who say turning to magic mushrooms to treat addiction is just replacing one substance or one drug with another drug?
Psilocybin and other psychedelics have extremely low addictive potential. I would not be worried about substituting one drug with another, because it is not habit forming like other drugs are.
All right, Dr. Chernoloz, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.